The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around the subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject matter.
Hey guys, welcome back to The Things We All Carry. And kind of want to touch on a couple of things this week. Last week's intro was kind of raw, kind of real. It got a little too raw at times, I think, for people. A little too raw for me, it felt like when I listened to it back. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that it's not everything is bad in my life. I battled and still battle demons of depression and anxiety and those self-worth questions. But not everything is bad. You know, I've got some great aspects in my life. I've got great people in my life. I've got support in my life. There's love in my life. There's a lot of good in my life. But when you're going through it and you get caught up in it, you tend to forget that. And I've got a lot of people, I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, "Hey man, we're here. We're thinking of you." And I think that it was a very intense intro, and it was one of those I just spoke from the heart, and I felt it necessary to speak from the heart because, this whole mission is you're not alone. You know, your trauma is unique, but your story is universal. Well, my story is universal. So if you can understand that there's many of us out here battling things, what I call demons or whatever you want to call them, the beast. We're out here battling it. We're doing it day to day, and we're going week by week and month by month, and we've got good in our lives, but we also have some dark in our lives. And I talked to Erin from after the tones dropped yesterday, and I told her, I said, you know, there's this, in periods of time, periods of life, it's darkness sprinkled with light, sprinkled with the happy, sprinkled with the good. That's that depression talking. And then on the other side, what you're aiming for is the predominantly good sprinkled with some darkness once in a while. And you have to have some of that in your life, because how do you figure out what's good and what's positive and what's happy if you don't experience some of the sadness as well? Unfortunately, for a period of time there, it was just sadness. It was just darkness. It was just sitting around waiting for life to happen instead of taking life and having it and living life. And I'm still in the process of learning how to just do that. And it's coming to me, and it's a good thing. Now, one of the things that been popular last couple of days on this little social media bubble of podcasters and firefighters and mental health professionals is this idea of, are we doing enough? And I guess, how do you define what enough is? Is it enough once you burn out? I don't know. Is it enough that someone reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I listened to your show and it made me reach out for help. And I'm here today because I listened to your show, or I listened to your story, and I understood that we all have pieces of this and we all go through this, and it's okay to, cliche as fuck, but it's okay to not be okay." I don't know what enough is. I don't know if I'm doing enough. I don't even know if I'm doing enough for myself, let alone anybody else. Probably not, but I'm getting there. I've woken up. I'm living, and I've got good things, you know. But what's enough? What's doing enough in this arena, in this genre of first responder mental health? I can't make people listen. I can't make people take the information and act upon it. And I don't know what more you can do. I'm raw and I'm real and I'm open, and people know that I have my own issues. And I bring resources. I bring the stories of the downfalls and stories of recovery. I bring professionals on the show to talk about it. And it's the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So I'm going to lead people to resources, but I can't make you take them. I can't make myself take them, let alone anybody else. So the question has been bandied about this week. What is enough? Are we doing enough? Well, luckily, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a joint show with Erin and Cinnamon from After the Tones Drop, and we're going to talk about just that. Are we doing enough? What can we do? I think one of the things Cinnamon said that was really poignant today was, we might we're doing enough. Let's just focus on not doing less and making sure that we get the words and the services out there to people and make sure people know they're not alone. I don't know what enough is. I don't want to do so much that I burn out on this. I know that. So how do I handle, is it enough? I just keep doing what I'm doing, and I put shows out when I'm able to put shows out, when I want to put shows out, when I have good content to put out. It's got to be valuable content. And if it's not valuable content, why would I even bring it to an audience? So I don't know who's doing enough. I know that I don't really want to do less, and I would like to do more, and I'm building towards that. But I don't know what qualifies and quantifies as enough. So if you guys have any ideas, I would love to hear about it. Yeah, it's the holidays. I think we're all struggling at times, or we're all celebrating at times. So just check in on people, let people know you're okay. Ask if they're okay. Engage in conversation, engage in fellowship, engage in community, and just be there for each other, because it's important, and make sure that everybody knows that they have some support. I think that's the most important thing. Make these people aware that they have support, that they're loved, and that people are thinking about them. And if you're one of those people like me at times where I need to hear it, then ask somebody, reach out to somebody. I know it sounds simple, but it can be so insurmountable at the same time. But don't neglect your friends. Even whichever end of the spectrum you're on there, don't neglect your friends, because they're a valuable resource, and they will come back and surprise you each and every time. And don't give too much credence to those demons either, because a lot of times what our mind is telling us is so far off from what reality is that that's a scary thing. So check in with people. If you think that you've wronged somebody and you want to check in and say, hey man, I think I did it dirty there. This is what happened. A funny thing happened. I did that the other day, and my friend came back to me and said, dude, thanks for the apology, but I've been thinking about you and curious how you're doing and where you are in life. And it was just a really good conversation to find out that, hey, I'm not hated, or I'm not treated with disdain. So don't give too much credence to your demons, but celebrate the positive. Get out there and love your family, love your friends, and, embrace the moments, embrace the holidays that are coming up. And yeah, just let everybody know they're not alone, that everybody has some support. And if the only support you get is here, well, come find me, because I'll give you support. I'll give you my number, and we can go back and forth, and I'll let you know that you are cared for and loved. It's too important, because I don't want to hear about another one dying. Welcome to episode 143 of The Things We All Carry. Today is a guest I met in Ohio when I was at the Helping Brothers conference. His name is Tim Spradlin. He has a very interesting past. He's been a very busy man in his life, and he'll tell you why he was busy. Some of it wasn't always positive to be busy. He's a veteran. He's a retired firefighter. He's a fire marshal. He's got all of it. He's got his feet in all the worlds of first responders. And what he does now is he runs equine therapy. He runs a farm called Finally Home Farms in Ohio, and it's all about equine therapy. And his message is multifaceted and layered and very interesting. He's a very engaging person, and it was an honor and a privilege to talk to him. I listened to his presentation in Ohio, and I was very surprised at some of the nuances of his presentation and how he wraps different pieces of religion and meditation and all of it into, because kind of his own recipe for how he takes care of himself and how he makes sure that he gets up every morning and stays on the track that he's on. So give this one a listen. Let me know what you think. Let Tim know what you think. And you guys get out there and do something for yourselves today.
A quick reminder to please help us build a community which not only recognizes, but supports each other through the struggles and recovery. Reach out through Instagram at The Things We All Carry, or email mystory@thethingsweallcarry.com to offer support and share your story. Please remember to leave a review on iTunes and give a shout out to any first responder you know, love, or care about. Y'all enjoy the show. I haven't recorded one in a while, so I feel like I'm getting back into it. So bear with me. No problem. Good morning and welcome back to The Things We All Carry. This morning I had the pleasure of speaking to Tim Spradlin from Ohio. What part exactly in Ohio, sir?
We're near Xenia, Ohio. That's the southwest area, kind of Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus triangle.
And that's exactly where you and I met as I sat and listened to your presentation on the programs you offer to veterans and first responders. And as soon as I heard what you were saying and you said some keywords that jumped out at me, and I knew immediately that you and I could have a good conversation and that your story would resonate with my audience and beyond. So I appreciate you coming on. If you would be so willing as to give us just a little bit of an introduction about yourself, and then we can go from there.
Well, I'm mostly retired, but I like to say God repurposed me.
So you're not retired.
No. But yeah, I started in high school, volunteer firefighter, military firefighter, 25 years career. Along the way, I cross-trained into law enforcement, did that part-time. And then I stayed in the military reserve and retired from that. 2 combat tours and just all the usual stuff we experience. And when I found myself retired, I was kind of lost. So I'm blessed I found a new purpose with what we do now.
Yeah, I think that there were 2 things, and maybe I'll give away some of it that I just said we shouldn't give away, but I think there were 2 statements that really jumped out at me. And one of them was about your journey with meditation and what it means to you. But it was also the fact that at one point you were asked what you were going to do now while you were in retirement. And the only response you had, and it was to your wife, I believe, was, I'm going to wait to die.
Yeah. After 35 total years of always having at least 3 jobs, I found myself sitting here, a workaholic, adrenaline junkie, overachiever, and I no longer had a uniform or a title. I was just lost. I didn't know how to be Tim. And I was isolating. I was washing my meds down with beer and angry at the world. And that's what my wife asked me. She says, well, you're all retired now. Good for you. What are you going to do? And I said, I'm waiting to die, because I just didn't know how to be anything except the identities I had absorbed so much. And, the only thing that got me out of that chair was go take care of our horses. And we were just trail riders, nothing fancy. And my horses were actually the first beings that were really honest with me about what was going on. And that's how we discovered this.
So, before we get too much further, what is the last song you heard?
Oh, I listened to our local country and bluegrass, and I heard some Toby Keith this morning. And it's funny because I joked that I was born too late in the wrong state, but the one I remember for sure this morning while I was doing barn chores is Should Have Been a Cowboy.
Okay. That's appropriate then, right? Yes. All right. So where did you grow up? What was childhood like? I know you had, how should I term it? Kind of an adventurous childhood when you found some information out at various points in your life, but give us a background on childhood for you.
Originally down in Scioto County on the river, down in the hills. And like a lot of folks, my family migrated up to the Dayton area for General Motors jobs. I was the oldest of 4 and only had a maternal grandmother living. And I always knew I was different. I didn't look like my brother and 2 sisters. There was, just something's different. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s, just before she died, my grandmother told me about my birth father and some of the experiences that my mother and I had with him. And it wasn't until 8 years ago, I guess, that I finally, with my wife's help, through Ancestry, did a deep dive into that and learned about my first 5 years and all the things that happened to my mom and I. Otherwise, grew up, dad was my dad who raised me. He worked the factory all day and Uncle's farm in the evening and all weekends, and every day killed a 12-pack in the process of that. He was physically home, but never really present. So growing up, that's what I learned. You work. And I also learned to drink.
You're taught right away that work is your identity.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it took down in the hills, you know, in previous generations, that there's no fun in life. You just worked. Dad was working his father's sawmill when he was old enough to walk and lead a mule dragging logs down the hill. And every day that I am conscious of him growing up, if he wasn't at work, he was in the garden or he was out at the farm or he was doing something until he went to bed. And he got up the next day and did it all over again.
When we had our conversation, we had a phone call a couple of weeks ago. You mentioned your ACEs score, and most of my audience knows what ACEs is, it's adverse childhood experiences. And you, you know, you're supposed to be a 0, right? That's what's ideal. And the higher the number, the more susceptible you are to various things throughout life. And I guess that's the easiest way for me to explain it. What do you consider your ACEs score then from childhood?
So, based on what I learned, again, it's never too late to get well. And I was in my 50s when I first discovered, I was invited to go to the Save a Warrior program where they use ACEs as a screening tool right on the front end. And out of the 10 questions, my ACEs score is a 7. But as we say, I'm not my score. Actually, finally learning that, how much those negative adverse childhood experiences, which is what ACE stands for, how much they affect your adult experience. It really was like, holy crap. Now, and then multiple rounds through the 12-step meetings and then leading others through the 12-step ACOA program allowed me to put all that away and heal from it. And including things in my first 5 years that I don't consciously remember, but connecting with my birth father's family, I got all the details. Understanding now why my mom was depressed. And when I first learned about my birth father, I tried to talk to my mom and dad and they just shut down. And now I understand what a horrible experience she had with me as a baby. And so one of the books on the Save a Warrior reading list that I've read and recommended is The Body Keeps the Score. And so all that's stuck in there somewhere. Yep. You got to feel it and let it. So that's how I got exposed to the ACEs. I was 57 years old, and it was just like, and that was a feeling. Holy crap! Now it makes sense. I think I said one of the experiences I learned that when my mom remarried, I was 4 years old. My birth father came to the house, and it was confrontational. And was in the room for that, I'm told. And my birth father offered my dad $200 to adopt me so he would not, quote, have to pay child support for that brat. And my dad refused and ordered him out of the house, and he adopted me anyway. And then in some of my own therapy, maybe out there working 3 jobs, trying to be Captain America, was trying to compensate and even prove to that guy who's long had that I'm worth more than $200. And it was just, I guess the term I think it was just set you free. I don't have to be that. I don't have to be that person anymore.
Right.
I can let that and understand how it happened.
So how do you find your way to the military? Why do you choose the military?
Oh, strictly accidentally. I was a volunteer fireman. I had 2 uncles growing up who were firefighters. One was a career down in Portsmouth, Ohio, right on the river. And then the other was a volunteer for 45 years, I think 25 years, those as chief. So as a small kid, I was in their firehouses, spending 24 hours with the career ankle. That's all I ever wanted to be. And my senior year in high school, at least here in Ohio, you had to be 21 before you could apply and test for a full-time city job. So I started volunteering in a local township. And then graduating, I'm impatient. And one of the guys that volunteered there was also the local Air Force recruiter. And this is when Jimmy Carter's president, the economy's horrible. The Air Force was working hard to recruit. And as long as you passed all the training, you get a guaranteed job in crash fire rescue. and with the idea that I would come home and get a career job. And that's the thing I didn't plan. I never planned to be in the military. I just wanted to be a fireman. I was let out early, 6 months early, to come home and accept a city job, and that required a 12-month stay in the reserve, which turned into 26 years. So it was a great side job from the firehouse. So that's how I ended up in the military. Completely accidental veteran.
But then you end up doing 2 combat tours.
Well, I got the opportunity, and it was part of that workaholic. I was successful enough to gain promotions. 20 years in crash fire rescue. Then I was selected as a first sergeant for the engineers, and did a lot of extra duty. I traveled to other reserve units around the country as an instructor for leadership programs and stuff. And after 9/11 attacks happened, and obviously the war on, I continued to volunteer constantly for deployments. And so the first time I deployed was as a first sergeant with engineers. And then after 5 years in that, they were shifting some things around, so I transferred over to security police. Spent my last 5 years there, my second combat tour with those guys. And again, it was more of that, as we jokingly say, don't you know who I think I am? How can they win this war without me? And so not only did I go, but I volunteered to do all kinds of dumb stuff, to be at the tip of the spear wherever there's a house fire. Where do you want to be? You want to be on the nozzle. Look, nobody wants to be back running the pump. It's that same attitude over there. And so I look back now, and I don't think I honestly did it out of a sense of service, other than in the reserve, it's what we always train for. That's your only purpose, is to train to be ready for an actual emergency. And so, the tone just dropped. It's time to go, and I want to be on the nozzle. So that's the kind of attitude that got me over there into some more crack to put in that bucket.
So you've got this multifaceted. Your trauma's coming at you kind of in a multifaceted way, because you're doing the combat tours, you're doing the reserves, and you're doing a career job as a firefighter. And so how does that start moving along for you? I mean, does combat affect you? Do you see enough of where you start to be affected there? Does the fire affect you more? Or is it truly a combination of stuff?
Iraq was on top of, because I was already, I'd done the same dumb stuff. I promoted past the fun level. February 2001, I'm deputy chief for our combination department here. We had a 5-year-old kid who dropped dead at school, and that was just the last drop my trauma bucket could hold. The panic attacks, the numbing started, and I was struggling to go to work, but I don't know how to quit and go do something else, which if I had been smarter, maybe I would have. And so when September 11th occurred, a lot of the volunteering to go downrange was to get away from work. The heck of it is, both times I deployed, I found myself in situations where we're shorthanded and stuff was happening, and my civilian medical skills came in handy. To the point, my second tour, we were SPs assigned an Army MP battalion. The battalion was supposed to put combat medics with crews outside the wire, but we do base defense by being offensive outside the wire. So I packed a kit and took my stripes off and started riding missions as a combat medic. Again, some of that was adrenaline, and some of it was just my job as a first sergeant, is to take care of the troops. And if the Army can't give me medics to take care of my guys, because we took casualties the third day there, I was trying to take care of my people. So it was all that was on top of, to the point that when I came home, I was eligible to retire. Actually turned 48 in Iraq, and I already had my 25 years in. So I pulled the plug on fire and crossed over and went to work for the State Arson Bureau here in Ohio, which is a police agency for state fire marshal, and did that for about 6.5 more years.
as you're this rare individual that I've spoken to that has this foot in every aspect of this first responder, military, veteran. You know, you've dipped your toe into each pool, it seems. And not only have you dipped your toe into each pool, but you've come away with your toe stained from each dip in those pools, correct?
Well, I jumped in the manure pond, man. It was even on the reserve deputy side, same thing. They said, well, we want to put a tactical medic on SWAT. So I could pass the PT test back then. So I did that for years. And SWAT call outs, I was a tactical medic. And yeah, I was comfortable running and gunning from my military experience. So but it's all a symptom of, to me, the unmourned grief and the being stuck from childhood.
Right.
We didn't do enough to fill a hole in my soul to make yourself feel like I was worth something.
So you said that the 5-year-old was that tipping point for you.
It was
obviously it's obvious that you were adding and adding and adding all along, but then this one was just traumatic enough, or your bucket was just full enough, or just the both. And it put you over that edge where you said, no, you realized you needed help, or did you just get to the point where it just got so much worse for you?
It just got worse. I was in denial. The problem starts as we learn through the work of Save a Warrior. Childhood is the original crime scene. We teach little boys that they cannot do what? They can't cry. So they grow into be men, and they completely block the pressure relief valve built in by God in this design, and it builds up. When I work with firefighters, I use the analogy of carbon monoxide poison. You understand that. It just keeps building up, and it's going to kill you sooner or later. And so I didn't get any professional counseling or help with anything until 2010. I was retired from the reserve because I got hurt in the last tour, and that made me angry because I wasn't ready to retire. So I think I'm worthless and or nuts. Then I was working for the marshal's office, and my son was in the Army deployed to Afghanistan. Big trigger with nightmares and stuff. I was nightly nightmares of loading one of my wounded troops into a medevac helicopter, but I was seeing my son's face. And so for the first time, I went to the Dayton VA to do some mental health work, and ended up spending most of that year over there in a group. But I never told my boss what I was doing. I lied to him and told him that I was going for physical therapy for my injury, because I'm not going to admit that I'm going to mental health and be disarmed and locked in the office or whatever. So that helped me get through that year, but I still wasn't well. It was just a crutch that helped me get through while Brian was downrange.
And I thought one of the most interesting stories you told me when we spoke was this story about you had given him something to take with him, but then he showed you what he had already taken. Is that correct? You didn't know that he took a piece of home with him for that tour, right?
Well, and I recognize I'm a military history fan, so I read the things we carried, or things they carried. I have a copy of it over here on the bookshelf somewhere. It's been a while. And so the title of your podcast, and I carried little talismans. I had a whole raft of little small flags tucked inside my plate carrier, and brought them back and gave them to special people. One of them I gave to my son. So when he went to Afghanistan, he showed me, I'm taking this with me. But then at some point he sent a photograph, and he's got this little teddy bear I bought in the hospital gift shop the day he was born. It's a little tiny one, and I didn't even know it was still around.
And he carried that for the entire tour.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a powerful ode to you.
Yeah, it meant a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine so. So you go to this group and you kind of keep it secret. You're going to work on yourself, but you don't want people to know you're working on yourself, which is so typical of what we do, right? We do that. I mean, to be honest with you, some of us do it in the physical sense as well as that emotional, mental sense, because we just don't want to be seen as weak. It's unacceptable for us to be weak. How does that progress into healing a little louder and a little more in the open? Is that a linear process, or do you start to feel better until you get back into it and you start seeing more and you start adding more and you're still drinking, and whatever those crutches and coping mechanisms were for you?
Oh, no, that therapy at the VA, 2010, 2011, just kept me moving while my son was in combat. It wasn't until I was retired I dropped the shame and stopped worrying about my reputation. And literally, as I said, my horses were being really honest with me. When I would sit in here in the man cave, I bought an Xbox and playing Call of Duty crap and isolating. And I was really good at wearing a mask. I talked to a lot of folks, military and first responders. They're alone in a crowded room because they've locked down so tightly. And then everybody around the kitchen table in a firehouse is probably doing it to some point. And we're trying to change that culture in my firehouse. And so it wasn't until another a little kick in the head from God to me, which faith is important for me, because I lost my faith after that 5-year-old agreed and tried to quit. But my horses were awful. Every time I went out to do something, run away from me. I can't catch them. When I do catch them, they don't want to cooperate. And I'm thinking I have problem horses. And literally one day I got my VFW magazine in the mail, and I opened it up, and there was an article about this equine therapy going on down mental health soldiers from Walter Reed. And they were using horses at Fort Myer, the horses that do the funerals at Arlington. And it's a ground-based mental health project. It struck me as I read and explained some horses, over 25 years, and I didn't really understand their psyche. And as it turns out, my horses, I didn't have problem horses. My horses had a problem human, because they communicate with energy, and they could feel the pain and the ugly and depression and anxiety coming out of me. And that's why they acted the way they did. They're almost a mirror. And so I found a place east of Columbus, and the experience just blew me away. And then it just dawned on me, hey, as I get well, I can do this. And so I got trained and certified in the therapy model and started the nonprofit. And now we are 10 years we've been doing it, and it just keeps growing, and we get new opportunities to serve. So it's, I didn't plan it. Nothing I'm doing right now was planned.
Right. Basically it boiled down to survival.
Yeah. It was actually a survival, like a life ring that was thrown to me, that it was a start, and I was doing okay. And it's actually because I was doing the equine work. When the Save a Warrior program moved to Ohio, I was asked to join them. They had an equine piece in their cohort experience at the time. That's changed since they restarted after COVID, but that's why I was invited to attend. And I was told, you'll be a witness. We're going to pretend you really don't need this, because it's an emotional detox for suicidal folks. And I had thoughts of suicide when I was stuck. So as I jokingly say, they lied to me, because there's no such thing as a witness. You can't help but be touched by going through that program. And they told me, you just lean into it and pretend you need it. And really the icing on the cake of finding total peace and contentment in my emotional health was that experience and the ACEs, understanding that, and then going through the 12-step adult child therapy, and an alcohol and medication free, totally at peace. And it's truly a blessing.
You know what I'm not terribly familiar with, and I don't know why we didn't speak about it when we had our phone call, is that 12-step. You called it ACOE, correct?
ACOA. So everybody's familiar.
ACOA, excuse me.
AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a 12-step recovery program, but it's also you got to change your life in the program, because In Sable Warriors, the same thing. You got to learn a new way of being, because your old ways, for example, an alcoholic is not going to go hang at the bar and drink Diet Coke without having a relapse. You gotta change your ways. You can't hang out with the people you used to get drunk with or get high with, because they're going to drag you back down. And so that's what it became, is a new way of being that will continue as long as I want to stay sober and at peace, not have any anxiety, resentment, depression. So ACOA, adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families, you grew up in that environment, so that's how it becomes normalized. And that's what I tell folks all the time. You're not broke, you're not defective, you're just normal. You were taught growing up, this is what we do. Oh, why did you whip your kids with a belt and leave welts on their butt? Why did my dad do it to me? Because his dad did it to him. It's generational dysfunction. And the 12-step ACOA program addresses all those, and you work through it. There's a piece that goes with that called the laundry list. It's 14 traits of things we do, like being a people pleaser, over responsibility, guilt for taking care of ourselves, all those things. You work through those. And then the real key is go back and help somebody else. As you get well, go upstream and pull somebody out of the water up there before they drowned, and pay it forward that way. So we actually, for a while there, and everybody's doing pretty well, but I had a lot of local folks, including some Sable Warrior alumni, who we did a weekly group, and we sat in the barn and did these 12-step meetings in the arena with horses around. And we're able to be vulnerable, a lot of tears. It's always fascinating to watch the horse's reaction to the human emotions. And it was good to help others.
You know, you mentioned a horse's reaction to the human emotion, and one of the things you did in that presentation that I was able to witness and listen to was you had people come into the corral there, and it was almost like a test to see if their emotions were in check and how the horse would react. Correct?
Well, it's not really a test. It's, as I like to say, that's a 4-legged BS barometer. You can't lie to that animal.
Yeah.
So horses are nothing like big dogs. Dogs are a predator. Horses are a prey animal. You know, all the predators on earth,
right,
or at least the big ones, have hunted and killed horses. And horses are also a herd animal. They're hardwired to be connected to others. Well, guess who else is a herd animal? We are.
Yeah.
Yet what do we do when we're herding? We isolate and we numb. And so what they learn, and as you saw at the demonstration, we do it one-on-one, one client, one horse normally. And that horse in that space doesn't want to be alone. So it wants to be with the human if the human feels safe, because that horse is picking up energy out to 10 feet radius. And a lot of folks, when the first time they do it, they walk towards the horse moves away, they turn around and say, the horse doesn't like me. Horses don't like or dislike. They just feel. They're very different than dogs.
Right.
So then we start talking and maybe trying to dig down and get some vulnerability. And it happens all the time. And work with a lot of horses at 4 different farms with a lot of different warriors. And as soon as we crack that armor and those tears start, that horse will come back. And sometimes it sneaks up behind them. And that's what's going on there. And that's how we learn. We're not learning about horses. We're not grooming and picking hooves and putting halters on and doing that kind of stuff. We're learning about it ourselves, but it's activity-based, so it works well for type A people like veterans and first responders. And you get this immediate feedback. And they tell folks, what just happened? The horse has no training to be this. He's just being a horse. I got to be trained and certified, but not the horse. And he felt your energy change. You did that. You dropped that armor and let that grief out. And now you're going to feel better. And you can do that at home without a horse in your living room. And the horse just gives them the feedback. And it's a beautiful thing. And I get choked up sometimes seeing things happen. And then you can use when we used to do, we still do a weekly group at a different farm with veterans from an addiction treatment center in Cincinnati. And we'll do this individual exercise one-on-one and around him, and the same horse will react differently to 5 different guys because they're all bringing in different energy. And there are some people who actually, I've seen a couple who even got a strong message without really touching the horse. They discovered something about themselves in the horse's reaction. And that's essentially what it is. It's a ground-based, the program is called EGALA, Equine-Assisted Growth and Learning Association. And it's all about learning through metaphors. And we don't necessarily tell them the horse's name or its gender. It's a reflection of me. And then when they do crack that armor and we get those tears, that's how I get paid, by the way. We don't charge anybody for this. The connection with that horse is the most honest connection with another being you're ever going to have, because that horse has no ego. It wants nothing from you. There's no transaction. It's just one-on-one with you in that space, and it wants to be connected. And it's always a blessing. We don't coach it. We just coach the human to get out of their head and into their heart. And then when the horse comes in and you see those hugs and tears, and some people are blown away because they can't imagine that just being close to this big animal, which has the unjust reputation that they bite and they kick. They feel connected, honestly connected and cared about for the first time, something they don't get from a human maybe because of the trauma they're carrying and the armor they're wearing.
It's ironic because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about childhood for me. And I remember going to a summer camp one year, and I don't know why this didn't come up in our conversation before, but I went to a summer camp and they had horseback riding as part of the camp. And I, like you, have a ACEs score, probably 6 or 7, but you don't know that score when you're a child, right? You just know that you're going through some shit basically, and you don't know how to react, and you're internalizing that, just like we talked about. You found out in your 50s how much you internalize and how much it shaped your life. I did too. I found out in my 50s how much I internalized and how much that those years before, say, 4th grade really affected the way my life was going to go.
Yep.
But I couldn't figure out, and this is funny because it just came to me. I couldn't figure out why I didn't do well with the horses in that summer camp. And now I know, it's because of what I was carrying as a child.
Exactly. So as a prey animal, and big cats and bears and wolves out west, obviously with wild horse herds, and a big cat will jump on a horse's back and try to bring it to the ground. It'll bite its neck. When you take a human full of anxiety and depression and frustration and you put them on the horse's back, the horse does not feel good about that. He feels like he's got a predator on his back attacking him. My horses were the same way. When I try to trail ride, it's all a battle. And I didn't understand it was me. And so even now with the coming of natural horsemanship, we don't break horses anymore. We gentle them, we train them, we connect with them. I don't climb on a horse unless we've spent 30 minutes on the ground getting connected and getting my energy, my presence, being mindful. I'm not going to climb on a horse carrying anxiety about what might happen tomorrow or that kind of stuff, because it's not going to be a good experience. They feel all that. They don't know why you're doing it, but they feel it. So that's why you go with that horse.
Yeah, well, it's kind of ironic because of that struggle. I've always said, no, I'm not good with horses. I don't do horses. I don't do, and so, but it's one of those memories that just came back. And I went, wait a second, now that starts to click in this dense brain of mine now I see what it was. And I never connected the two together. Even when I watched the presentation, I didn't connect the two together. You mentioned that you're the part that needs to be trained for this program, and your training is to kind of guide these people to dump those feelings, the negative feelings, the grief, the shame, the anxiety. Hey guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount, and I appreciate all of you. I have one request though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show. How are you coaching them through doing that?
So the Gallo model is experiential learning through metaphors. So whatever their experience is, ideally, in a perfect world, the mental health professional is in the space with you. I'm certified as an equine specialist because of my horse experience, but I'm also trained in Ohio as a peer support because I'm a survivor. So often the most important thing I tell someone is me too. And they look
Yeah.
at me and they'll say, not you, you seem so calm and cool. I said, yeah, not 11 years ago. And so they take some comfort in that, I've found, because they think they're the only person that's messed up, because everybody else in their unit, everybody else in the roll call or in the firehouse seems to be okay. And I tell them, yeah, they're all hiding it too. And they're not.
Oh, yeah.
But here locally, so I travel over east to Columbus. It's about 90 minutes over to the farm where I discovered this. And I now travel over there and serve as a facilitator for veterans. And they're at full-time mental health practice on a horse farm. So my mental health partner, she's always there. Here locally, none of my mental health connections at Dayton VA, or I have two in the community that specialize in the police and fire population. They can't come to the barn because they're seeing clients hour to hour. There's no time to drive out here.
Right.
They've all been out to the barn for orientation, and they refer people to me all the time, and we partner with that. So, I'll ask them, what's going on with your therapist this week? What have you talked about? And then the things we're going to work on. The biggest thing we learn from a horse is to be present. Horses are always present. Horses have a great memory, but they don't carry the trauma and emotions, and they don't try to control the future. They just live totally in the moment. And that's a key lesson there. And then I pass on and pay forward the Save a Warrior wisdom, again, of that childhood stuff. I get somebody that has a high ACEs. I mean, take this and go talk to the therapist, process that there too. One of my partners, she does EDMR, which seems to be EMDR, excuse me, seems to be a really effective.
There you go. Yeah.
Therapy model for folks like us. And then they sign a release so we can share notes. But I literally have her call up. She'll call up and say, hey, I've got Bob here in the office. He's a firefighter in Smallville, and he needs to come out and see you. And she'll put Bob on the phone and make him schedule an appointment in the barn right then. And then she'll call me later.
Right.
We've had a session. So we work back and forth. I don't try to be a facilitator, peer support. I'm a chaplain through my church for crisis intervention. But I am not a therapist. Most of all, I'm a survivor, and I can help them learn what got me to be at peace. And that to me is the goal. I tell folks all the time. I ask them, I say, are you happy? Well, no. I said, but are you at peace? No, not yet. I said, can you be happy, or can you be at peace with the things you're not happy with? There's things in my life I'm not happy with, but I'm at peace because I'll let go of the need to try to change them and just let it be above my pay grade. So peace is the goal.
So the coaching is, because that's essentially what you're doing. You're taking all your experience, your peer support, your actual recovery experience for yourself, and your experience with the horses, and you're bringing that into, and you're putting it to bear with these folks, and just saying, hey, this is just, it's. I'm trying to wrap my head and fathom how you are coaching them to just let that go, and it's just, is they have to find their way, as in they judge the reaction from the horse and they find their way to let it go, or are you actually giving them tips and tricks?
I share my experience, but there's also a lot of metaphors. One powerful one we discovered years ago, if you're familiar with a barn, obviously horses tend to leave a lot of manure around. And we have these big red tubs we call muck buckets. And that's a metaphor for your past. It's sitting there, and figuratively or metaphorically, you're carrying it, and you have to choose to put that down. And then there's some other ground-based exercises we do. We use some poles, barrels, props, hula hoops. All of them end up being a learning experience about what's going on inside me. I'm afraid to take this step over this pole. Well, why? I got to get outside my comfort zone if I'm never going to grow any. So those are some examples of how we Eventually, big one is asking for help. So we set up a little, I don't like to call it an obstacle course. It's a challenge course. We don't really have obstacles. We have challenges to overcome, but we don't want them to be an obstacle. And another one we do with groups is actually, it's called blind faith. We ask someone to lead a horse. We put a halter on the horse, ask them to lead the horse through an obstacle course. And then just before they start, we put a blindfold on them. And that starts the whole conversation about, ooh, I need help. Okay, who are you going to ask for help? Who do you trust?
Yeah.
Willing to have some faith that someone's going to lead you through this. So, but the physical experience of doing it with the horse sets a different kind of memory than just talking about it in the clinical session. We combine that. So that's some of the ways we.
Yeah, you get an immediate feedback on what you're quote unquote doing right. And it's not necessarily doing right. It's that it's a feedback on your ability to let it go.
Be present, be honest, open, willing, be vulnerable, feel your feelings, ask for help, take a chance, overcome fear. A lot of folks, actually sometimes two members of the population are the toughest to work with. First are the Marines, because they've got this incredible culture that it's hard to overcome.
Yeah.
Their armor, and
it is
vulnerable. And second is people who have a lot of horse experience, because like me, they want to show me how much they know about horses, and I have to coach them into, I don't care how much you know about horses. You want to work on you here. And there's things, people do unconsciously. I read their body language. The cop part of me, look at them. Are you nervous right now? You are your arms crossed. And we have to overcome. Some people come out just mortified. Oh my God, horses are huge. They're going to bite me. They're going to kick me. In all the years of doing this and all the different farms that I've traveled to and used their horses in their space, we've had one bite that left a bruise during a Sable Warrior cohort years ago. And that guy got a tremendous metaphor message out of it. And he was literally walking around saying, look at my arm. The horse told me to do this. And he wasn't. Otherwise, that's part of it, because I got to overcome fear of this horse if I'm going to overcome fear of going out in society, of being in crowds, of hearing loud noises, the fireworks, or whatever else is triggering me. So that's if I can overcome fear here, I can do it in other places in my life.
Another part of your story that fascinated me was how multifaceted your recovery is or was. And I say is because it's obviously an ongoing thing. You have numerous parts, and some of them might seem like they don't fit together in some ways, but you've taken the bits that work for you and put it all together. Am I correct?
I believe that's the only way. First of all, I was never going to get well sitting here alone. So I had to take the chance to get out. My 2010 individual counseling at the VA led me into a group, which I was really nervous about going to, but it was called PTSD University. And I had that diagnosis, but I'm cured. I believe it's possible to cure. And when I went into that group, I'm over 50 by then. And I had, since I deployed to Iraq older, but I had a lot of young troops, even younger than my kids. And so this room is full of not only young troops, but there's older Vietnam era veterans in there. And that gave me a great comfort to, number one, I'm not too old to get well. Number two, eventually I was able to open up and be comfortable in the group. So I have a healthy herd to be on that journey. So I'm going to always in my life stay connected to a healthy herd that feeds my healing versus, honestly, some of the folks I used to work with or run around with are good for. I got family that's good for. I have to set a boundary and keep a distance. And so it was a combination ultimately of equine therapy, clinical counseling, Sable Warrior, 12-step, and the things I learned is my new way of being. I wake up with gratitude every day. I pray to God as my higher power as I understand him. I meditate every day. I try to take good care of myself every day. I try to be outdoors every day. And wash, rinse, repeat. I will never stop doing that, because I know to stop doing that, I'm going to go back down the rabbit hole and be that angry person playing Call of Duty. I don't want to be that anymore. So it's a different way of being. There's no miracles or magic pill. There's no suddenly one day you say, whoa, I'm all well now. Life is perfect. You have to do these things every day to stay present. Practice that gratitude every day. You wake up, I look outside, it's dreary, it's cloudy, there's mud, wet leaves everywhere. But I woke up and there's coffee. So I got to start looking for gratitude. And another big one is forgiveness. I had some conversations with God on forgiving both my dad and my birth father for their way of being, because they didn't know any better. And they were both dead by the time. But I realized I had a lot of bitterness there because of what I'd learned. And I got to let that go. Forgiveness is for me, even if they don't deserve it. And learning that was really another thing that helped set me free from a lot of the grievances I was dragging around.
Did you have to learn how to forgive yourself as well?
That's the first person you got to forgive. And that was understanding, like I said, especially after understanding the ACEs and learning about my early childhood, was I'm normal. I was what I was taught to be. I wasn't a bad person. I wasn't a horrible human being. I was just stuck, and I learned how to get unstuck. So yeah, forgiving yourself, because we blame ourselves. You look around again, guys do this all the time. You're looking around the kitchen table in the firehouse and you're saying, there's something wrong with me because none of these other guys are doing anything.
Right.
We start, another big deal is that I learned Sable Warrior program have a lot of great givens. And one of them is that resentment you're building when you have expectations, things to happen. When things don't happen the way you want them to, you get resentment. That goes back to control. And I tried being God with a small g, and it didn't work. So I got to let go of it.
So you start your day with gratitude, and you find your time. Have you structured your days so you know when your meditation periods are going to be? You know when the horse. You obviously, as a caretaker of the horses, you know when your horse time is going to be.
Well,
but how do you structure that from day to day for yourself?
some days it's different. I mean, not working full time anymore. I'm still a reserve deputy. I help out with stuff at the county. When I can, I'm chaplain for the firehouse. I try to stop in a few mornings a week and have coffee with the guys. We're changing that culture there. We sit, senior guys and myself as the retired chief, now chaplain, and young guys, and we have good conversations about mental health at our firehouse kitchen table. And so we're changing that culture, our little department, one at a time. But it all depends. I like to meditate outdoors by the barn, especially if there's rain on the metal roof. But I get it in somewhere in the day. I like to get it first thing in the morning. If I have a tough day, I'm going to do some extra meditation and prayer, because we still have drift. Things pop up. The old angry me, just a few weeks ago, coming home from in town, stumbled right into a motor vehicle crash as it was happening. And it was an intoxicated driver hit a truck and a horse trailer. I'm off duty, but I knew most of the folks there from sheriff and fire, and I ended up helping and helped extricate the horse. And she was badly injured and she had to be put down. And I came home angry. And I hadn't felt like that in ages. And then I cried, and then I got angry some more. But then I knew I had to go, and I went to the barn, spent some time with the horses, deep breathing, let that go, did an extra meditation, and work through it. And whatever pops up in my life, I know how to work through it versus letting it take me back to the old way of being. So every day is a little different. I got a veteran coming out at 1:00 today. Got a thing at church tonight at 6 to put up Christmas decorations. I got tomorrow. I don't know what's in tomorrow. I look at today.
Well, that's living in the present, right?
Yeah, I currently got 6 warriors, which in general, first responders and veterans, currently got 6 in different stages of our like 8 lesson curriculum, and then some come back for more. Some call me up, months later and say, "I'd like to come out for a little tune-up." And always happy to do that. So, and they're scheduled around. I stay clear of Sundays. That's church and family, and otherwise I'm pretty flexible with. So every day is a little different. There is really no daily routine, except even changing up the horse's feed a little bit is good for them, because in the wild, natural horsemanship, feeding them on a strict schedule may not be good for their digestive system, because they are
Okay.
herd animals who roam and graze. So if I don't get them fed exactly at 7 o'clock in the morning, I don't worry about it. It's good for them to have a change up in their schedule sometimes.
And so, first of all, I think we've failed to mention the name of the program that you created. And so why don't you share that with the audience?
We came up with the name Finally Home Farm. It was something, I don't know why it popped in my head. When we first bought this place and we were building it up and got the first horses 30 years ago, my wife and I called it Murphy Acres. Jokingly, it was Murphy's Law. Anything that could go wrong did go right. And we hung a sign out at the road that said that. But when we started the nonprofit, we actually literally changed the name. It was just, I just remember, especially after my second deployment, I'm finally home, and it was a good feeling. So that's what we're called, equine therapies for veterans and first responders.
Well, I think that name of the program can be interpreted in numerous ways. For first responders, the veterans, to find peace, they're finally home.
Mind, body, and spirit. That's what we're working on. Get all those, and that's something like, the reason Jimmy and those guys invited me to serve as a chaplain at that conference. See, our chief asked me to come back to the firehouse and serve as a chaplain. We're trying to address that third leg. We finally, back when I was still on the job, physical fitness became a good priority. And we've been breaking the stigmas down for the mental health. Some sort of spiritual wellness is also important, whatever. I mean, I don't preach to anybody. I tell them, if you don't have a God, I'll share mine, but you got to believe in something. Otherwise, you're trying to control all this.
Right.
So I've got a military veteran right now who practices Taoism. And so I've been learning, and I'm okay with that. I'm not going to tell him he's wrong. So that's his higher power that helps you let go of the need to try to be in control. Mother Nature, the universe, karma, whatever it is. It's important to have some sort of spiritual foundation in your wellness journey.
Again, it's another thing that jumped out at me when you talked about it, because you're very open about your faith and your beliefs, but you're very open to anybody's opinion as well. You talked about whatever that higher power is, whether it's like you just said, Taoism or Buddhism or whatever it is, or nature in general, just have something that is above you and stronger than you.
So there are some who in the practice of religion would try to change everyone. Well, there we are again. Now we're trying to control little people.
Right.
And I get that. And I meet a lot of folks who, like me, maybe were raised with some faith, but they lost it because of their experiences on the street or in war. And so I asked them, how's your faith? Well, I haven't been to church in years. It's not the question. I happen to belong to a church, and my wife and I are active members of a church, because that's another community of staying at peace in that particular realm. I just asked if you have faith. And how do you practice it?
Right.
And so we get in some good conversations, and I don't invite them to my church. I don't testify to them or preach to them. I just tell them that, I can tell you for sure that without that to pray to and let go, I probably wouldn't be standing here. So hope you find what works for you.
So what does the future hold for the farm? Are you content with where it is now, or do you want to
make this larger? What do you think? In what direction do you think you're going?
I'm absolutely content with, this is just our home, and we see folks here, individuals here. I travel to another farm for that weekly group, and then we travel to the other farm east of Columbus. We get veteran referrals from Columbus VA over there. And I'm not looking to grow it. I'm not looking to do it full time. I'm not looking to make money at it. I'm just doing my little part every day and referring people to other programs. People come to me first. The one thing I really push them hard on is you need a professional therapist. Here's the vet center. Here's the VA. Here's Kathy or Carla if you're a first responder. I'm pushing them hard to do that because I want to partner with them. I'm not trying to be it all. I'm going to be 65 Saturday, and we've been doing this 10 years, and I'll keep doing it as long as I'm able, I guess. It gives me a lot of peace.
Well, first of all, happy birthday.
Well, thank you. People thank me a lot. I said, no, thank you, because in doing this, small scale, one warrior at a time, it's part of my giving back that keeps me well. So everyone who shows up shows me also. They look at me funny when I tell them that, but yeah, I'm serious. So.
All right. Well, let's get to those two final questions. And I'm very interested to hear, I'm fascinated to hear both these answers, but first of all, what is that latest, or what's the moment of awe that you hold and you remember and you want to share with us?
Well, there's a lot. There's two that stand out. So 2007 in Iraq, third day in, without telling a war story, it was definitely a message from God that I was right where I was supposed to be and things were happening as they should. And it really, I immediately went to I spent the rest of my tour spending some time with the chaplain talking from then on. And then actually just Saturday, had something I'd never seen happen before. A veteran and his wife, who was a corrections officer, both Sable Warrior alumni, who came out to visit and to see what we do, and had a horse in there. And so we talk about a horse being a prey animal. Their only defense is speed. And my horses seldom leave their feet when they're in there with another person. But they do. It's a myth that horses never lay down unless they lay down and sleep. They lay down and sleep in the sun. So we're just doing an orientation, and I'm talking to these two folks, and the horse is very interested. And then he just laid down in the arena. And then he was curled up with his head up, and then all of a sudden he just rolled back, laid his head flat out, and started to snore. And then he started to breathe. His feet were moving. He was kicking his legs. He was dreaming. And it just blew me away because that was the first time I've seen any horse completely go to sleep with a human around. And that horse really felt safe in that container. And that's why I love this work. I see things all the time I've never seen before. So that was just a couple of days ago.
That's a beautiful story. Yeah, because I mean that's the ultimate. That's the utmost. Like you said, they can't relax unless you're completely relaxed. And so for have that horse to go to sleep is amazing.
And it was just funny that he started snoring. He might have farted at him.
Yeah.
But his legs started moving.
Well, who doesn't?
He's having a dream.
So what about a book, sir? And I wanted to give you a nod because you are the first person I've had on the show that picked up where the title of the show came from without me having to say something. So I give you that credence and thank you for noticing that and picking up on it. I appreciate that. But for you, what's a book do you want to share with the audience?
It's hard. I love to read. I got a lot of books. I got a Kindle now, so I got a lot more books. But I guess if there's a favorite, I love history, military history, Civil War period, The Killer Angels, Jeff Shara. And then he did prequel and sequel novels after that. His son did, and Michael Shara. I might have got father and son mixed up there, but I actually got to meet him at Gettysburg years ago. at a reenactment, and I got one of the books is autographed. So that's one of my favorites there.
Yeah, that's a fantastic series, and the fact that the son picked up where the father left off and kind of continued that legacy is a touching piece of it as well.
So I just finished a book called Pegasus Bridge.
Okay.
It's World War II D-Day landings, British paratroopers and glider troops. And so then there's a piece of that, and I save, big fan of Turner Classic Movies with no commercials. So I'm reading Pegasus Bridge and realize on the DVR I had of the movie The Longest Day saved. And so I got to watch the movie part, and I found out some interesting trivia and stuff. So the movie that was made based on Cornelius Ryan's book, The Longest Day, of the entire D-Day landing, and this little piece of it by the British at this bridge, it was all, sometimes I'm a history geek, so it's hard. It's my favorite.
I can understand that. Yeah. But is there anything you want to add to this conversation? Anything that I might have not remembered to put in here, or anything you might want to bring into the conversation?
I'm just really grateful, number one, for my personal recovery and finding this mission. As I like to say, I'm not retired. God repurposed me. And secondly, the change, good men like you who are changing the culture of the fire service, law enforcement, the military, understanding it's okay to not be okay, that we've got to talk and feel and grieve, or we're going to carry this crap forever, and it's going to weigh us down and break us down. And so seeing that happen in my lifetime has been a real blessing, and I hope it continues to grow, and wish you well with what you're doing to get that word out.
Well, I thank you very much, sir. And I thank you for coming on the show and being willing to share what you're doing and a little bit of your story.
Oh, thank you. It's a blessing.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com, for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.